What's good? What's good? I got a new toy. Just the basic frame and hammer. We are starting a new job. It's an addition. It's gonna have an A-frame, or a vaulted roof, excuse me. And it's gonna be fun to work on. But I lost my old cheap hammer, so I had to get this one. Anyways, some things that have been on my mind. I've been trying to ruminate on. I don't know if the mainstream media has not covered this story much because I just don't really consume mainstream media anymore. But I have seen a lot of the alternative media claiming that the mainstream media has not covered this story much. And this is the story of the Ukrainian woman, immigrant young woman, who was brutally and senselessly, pointlessly murdered on a bus by an African-American man. And the way the alternative media, the right-leaning, I guess, alternative media is portraying this is that the mainstream media has been very quiet about that. And then it kind of connects to this narrative around the idea that the mainstream media is trying to run cover for the African-American community by not discussing the reality of crime statistics and suppressing stories that make it hard to have that conversation. And that is a conversation I am really saddened we're not allowed to have, and that we're not having at a deep, nuanced level. I found this gentleman named Marquette, a black gentleman, extraordinarily intelligent and eloquent. And I think he would be a really good person to be on one side of the conversation. And then another person, maybe like Stefan Molyneux. I think the two of them tackling that conversation would be fantastic. Because I'm honestly disappointed that I'm at this place where I'm consuming alt-right or alternative right media because it's closer to the truth, but I wouldn't even say it's truthful. And of course, it's got a lot of racism in it, and the movement. Not all of it is racist, but a lot of it is racist. And I think, honestly, there has been a rise in racism because we are not accurately talking about reality. And we're not having the hard conversations. And so the pressure that builds from suppressing information and from lying to people, from gaslighting people like the mainstream media does in an attempt to divide us and to destabilize us. I think it's all intentional. And let me just tell this little joke that's true but kind of inspired this video. I was off work the other night, 9 p.m. There's not a lot of places open, and I was hungry, and I was really hungry, and I just wanted some food, some hot food, not like beef jerky and hummus. I wanted hot food. So there was Popeyes open. And I was like, oh shoot, I've actually never been to Popeyes. I've never had their food. I know their established brand, etc. So I put the coordinates in my GPS, and I'm going there, and I'm like, oh, this is going to a part of town that I haven't really gone to before. Foreshadowing. But anyways, so I'm going there, and I'm like, this is a little adventure, an after-work adventure. And then as I get closer to the destination, I'm like, oh, okay, we have found the less gentrified parts of town. You could call it maybe the ghettoer parts of town. I would not at all say it is a ghetto, because it wasn't that bad, but it was just, there was a seedy vibe. The buildings were much less maintained, a lot more graffiti, a lot more, homeless people, and a lot more just people on the streets, etc. It was not the normal part of town. And I'm compassionate for them, but that's the truth. So like, I'm trying to convey the truth without being judgmental. It's tough. I'm not there yet. But anyways, in my head, here's the joke. I thought to myself, well, I am going to Popeyes. Popeyes is like a fried type of chicken place. And I would say their primary demographic is probably the African American community. And so, yeah, there's some latent racism that I'm unpacking, but it's all connected to this desire to have a conversation around the 1350, we'll call it, which I'm not claiming I believe is entirely accurate, but the idea in itself, I think, does reflect reality. What is the 1350? 13% of the community implies the African American population commits about 50% of the violent crimes in America, which is a staggering statistic. And when connected with the idea of the mainstream media not telling the truth and then suppressing stories like that black guy for no reason brutally murdering that white immigrant woman, it gets frustrating. And then a particular meme that frustrated me on the issue further was a side-by-side image of the immigrant the media has been nonstop talking about and giving compassion to, which is the MS-13 gang member that we don't know if we're deporting him or we are or not deporting him, whatever. Can't remember his name. Albert or something. Anyways, doesn't matter. So on one side it was him, and the media is giving him all this love and attention, and on the other side it was the Ukrainian woman who's getting no attention and no compassion from the mainstream media. And when you see stuff like that, it is very frustrating as someone who is not a conservative, but who just wants reality reflected and who wants to see the truth. And it's like, yeah, one person's a criminal and another person was fleeing a freaking war zone and was actually probably safer in the war zone, unfortunately, than in a black neighborhood. I don't know what neighborhood she was in, but it's really unfortunate, as I keep saying, that we cannot have this conversation. But I do want to bring up this point that I have mentioned several times in a lot of my past videos when I talk about racism or systemic racism or fascism or America and how it's a messed up country. I think what is at the root, the absolute root of this problem is the fact that black fathers were taken out of the home. And that started in slavery and continued through segregation and feminism to the point where now today it is a huge fucking problem that a very large portion, a majority of young black men are raised in fatherless homes. And I believe that is at the root of this entire conversation. And so when I said it started in slavery, they quite literally would separate the men from the women and children. Not always, but it was a common practice. They did not want that sense of connection beyond, reproducing more slaves. Fucking gross. Fucking disgusting. Slavery was horrible. I just want to say that. I've also been hearing this talking point, though, of who were a majority of the slave owners. I have not yet done my research. There is an implication there, but I'm not saying I believe that. But I am curious now. It was a very small portion of the population were actually slave owners. We're getting sidetracked. But then, talking about through segregation and feminism, this is something I also need fact checked, but I've heard many, many, many people say, and that I would believe, during the phase of feminism, I can't remember which phase, but one of them, social workers, liberal white women often, would go into the homes of black women and say, you can get more money from the government if you're single. So if you kick the man, keep the man away, keep the man away. That more money you get from the government is your freedom, because you deserve freedom and agency and independence. Thus, subverting an entire fucking culture in a very just insidious way. You know, promising freedom, but not telling them it's going to destroy their entire culture. That's fucking racist as shit. And there are the people who say that's what happened, you know, say that it was from, you know, a racist point of view. They knew that that's what would happen, and that's what they were trying to do. And then there's the whole Planned Parenthood and eugenics element, and how many black babies have been aborted. So many black babies have been aborted. And so this video probably has taken a little bit of a weird turn, because, you know, I started talking about my latent racism, but now I'm talking about the fact that I have a tremendous amount of compassion for what has happened to the black community, and wish that we could have some raw, real, honest conversation. Because I don't believe this is the natural state of the black person. And that's going to trigger some alt-right people, but I do not believe this is the natural state. I believe this is the manufactured state from propaganda and destabilization. But to wrap up the entire video, longer than normal, but the boss man hasn't showed up yet, so I'm rambling still. We're seeing the same patterns now in a less direct way, you know, sort of spreading to other cultures, spreading to the generic concept of destroying the nuclear family altogether. So they did it in like the 30s and 40s, I think is where my brain's going, but it could have been the 20s or the 50s, in that range, that wave of feminism. But now that they've successfully destabilized the black family, now it's time to spread and just destabilize all families. And I don't want to say it's like a communist thing, because it is a communist thing, but the elites doing all of this aren't actually communists. That's the thing. They just see communism as the best way to consolidate power and resources. Thus, that's kind of the method, the tool that they use to oppress society. Because it absolutely is a communist ideal to abolish the family. Because there are inherent property implications when you talk about parents owning their children and owning the rights to their children and to what can, etc., right? So it's not actually the communists, but they use communist ideology. It's just the elitists, or the E-Steen people. I can't say the full name because YouTube will suppress the video. But what do you think? Am I racist? Am I confused? Am I uninformed? Leave a comment. Thank you. Much love.